The dock smelled like burnt fuel and wet metal. Riva Oren had smelled worse. She had spent 11 years pulling ore from asteroid belts where the air recyclers were old and the filters were older, where the smell of iron and sweat followed you into your sleep. A busy cargo dock was nothing. She walked through the gate with her manifest in hand and her boots hitting the floor like she owned the ground under them. Kelvara Deep Dock was the kind of station that made you feel small on purpose. The ceilings were high enough to fit a Thurak freighter standing upright. The corridors were wide enough for 6 Vorith to walk side by side. Everything was built for species that were large, armored, or both. Humans were neither. Riva was not thinking about any of that. She was thinking about the cargo in Bay 7. Medical supplies. Cold-packed enzyme treatments for a Colony 3 relay jumps out, where something had gotten into the water supply and 43 people were already sick. The manifest said the supplies had to move within 6 days or the packaging integrity would fail. She had 4 days of travel time already behind her. She had 2 days left to load, clear, and launch. She found the clearance desk and set her manifest on the counter. The officer behind the desk was Vorith. That was not unusual. Vorith ran most of the dock operations in this sector. He was broad across the chest, with a heavy scaled neck that marked senior military rank, and he looked at the manifest the way someone looks at an insect that has wandered onto their meal. His name tag said Draxul. Commander, he did not pick up the manifest. Human, he said, not a greeting, more like an identification, the way you name a type of cargo. Riva Oren, hauler registration KD 7741, medical delivery, priority class. She kept her voice flat and even. I need clearance process today. Draxul picked up the manifest then. He read it slowly. She could tell he was not reading it for information. He was reading it to make her wait. Around the desk, dock workers moved in the usual flow of a busy station. A pair of Sephani workers pushed a supply cart past. 2 Thurak mechanics argued in low rumbles near a side corridor. Nobody paid attention to the clearance desk. Draxul set the manifest down. Secondary inspection, he said. All incoming medical cargo requires chemical content verification. Standard procedure. It was not standard procedure. Riva had cleared 6 stations in the past year with the same cargo class and the same documentation. She knew what secondary inspection meant. It meant waiting. It meant someone with authority had decided to make things inconvenient and had dressed it up in language that sounded official. The colony is under outbreak conditions, she said. The supplies expire in 6 days. I have documentation from the Colonial Health Board, secondary inspection, Draxul said again. Same tone, same face. Like he was reading from a script he found boring, that he stamped the manifest with a red hole marker and pushed it back across the counter. Riva looked at the stamp. She looked at him. Then she picked up the manifest, folded it once, and put it in her jacket pocket. How long for secondary inspection? She asked. We will contact you when a slot opens. She thanked him. She turned and walked away. Behind her, she heard Draxul say something to the officer beside him. She did not catch all of it. She caught the word soft and the low sound that followed it, which was laughter. She did not stop walking. The corridor that led away from the clearance desk branched left toward the cargo bays and right toward the docking arms. Riva went left. She was 3 steps into the branch when she heard a small voice. Excuse me. She stopped. A Sephani worker was standing near the wall. Small, narrow, with the pale blue coloring of the younger workers. She was holding a supply clipboard to her chest like a shield. Her name badge, said Eula. I am sorry, Eula said quietly. About Commander Sol. He does that with all the solo haulers. It is not right. I just wanted to say that. Riva looked at her for a moment. The Sephani had large, careful eyes that were watching her with something between worry and kindness. It was a small thing, what she had said. It did not change anything practical. But it was the first thing anyone on this station had said to her like she was a person. I appreciate it, Riva said. Your cargo, Eula said. The whole marker he used, there is an appeal process. Most people do not know about it. You can request a priority review through the Admiral's office if you have colony health documentation. She paused. You said you had documentation. Ido. Eula nodded. Then she looked back toward the clearance desk like she was worried she had said too much. She gave a small dip of her head and moved away with her card. Riva watched her go. Then she pulled out her manifest, unfolded it, and looked at the red hold stamp .6 days. 2 of them already gone before she had even docked. She did the math the way she always did. Not with panic, just with the clean arithmetic of someone who had grown up where numbers meant life or they meant nothing. If secondary inspection ran the full review period, the medicine would expire on the shelf in a cargo bay, and 43 people in a colony she had never visited would get worse before anyone noticed. She folded the manifest again and put it away. She went to find Brend. He was in the engine bay where she knew he would be, sitting on an overturned crate with a cup of something hot. He took one look at her face and did not say anything clever. He just got a second cup and poured. They sat in the noise of the engine bay, in the smell of fuel and heat, and the sound of a station that did not know or care that they were there. "How bad?" Bren asked. "Bad enough," she said. He nodded. They drank. Bren had been on Kelvera Deep Dock for 6 years. He had arrived the same way most humans arrive at remote stations. On a short contract that quietly became a long one, then a permanent one, until the station started to feel more like home than the place you had left. He knew where the good fuel lines were. He knew which mess hall served food that a human stomach could actually process. He knew the politics of the place the way you know weather. Not because you studied it, but because you lived inside it long enough. He told Riva all of this in the engine bay while the noise of the station moved around them. Draxel runs clearance the same way his father ran the frontier patrols. Bren said, "You come in small, you wait. You come in big, you walk through. That is how it has worked here since before I arrived." "How many humans come through?" Riva asked. "Maybe a dozen a year. Solo olers, mostly. The big shipping companies use through-rack pilots because it looks better at Vorathron docks." He shrugged. "We're a footnote out here. You know that." She knew that. Riva had been born on Marin Station, a gravity-heavy industrial colony built into the side of a large asteroid in the outer belt. The gravity there ran at 1.8 times standard. Nobody had chosen that. It was a consequence of the asteroid's composition and the station's age. The compensation systems had failed in the second decade of operation, and the repair budget had never come through. The people who lived there had simply adapted. You adapted or you left. Most people left. Riva's family had stayed. From the time she was 9 years old, she had worked in the ore processing tunnels with her mother and her uncle. Not because it was required, but because the colony ran on every pair of hands it had. The work was heavy. Everything on Marin was heavy. Carrying a standard supply crate, there felt like carrying 2 of them anywhere else. Walking a full shift felt like walking 2. You stopped noticing after a while. The weight became ordinary. What had not become ordinary was what the weight did to your body. Bren knew some of this. He had heard the stories about high-G colony workers. He had even met a few over the years. But he watched Riva now with the look of someone connecting things they had kept separate. "Your bones," he said. "Dense," she said. "Muscle fiber, too. The body builds what it needs." "How long did you work the tunnels?" 11 years underground. 3 in the belt after that. She looked at her cup. "I do not look like much. I know that. I'm not tall. I am not wide. But what I am made of, that is not standard." Bren was quiet for a moment. Then Eula appeared at the edge of the engine bay. She had her clipboard again. She moved with the careful steps of someone who was not sure they were welcome, but had decided to come anyway. "I looked at the inspection schedule," she said. "I should not have, but I did." She set her clipboard on the crate beside Riva. "Commander Sewell filed your hold under extended review. The earliest inspection slot available is 9 days from now." Riva did not move. 0.9 days. "The supplies expire in 6, she said. "Yes," Eula said. She looked genuinely pained. "I know." Bren exhaled slowly through his nose. He looked at the ceiling. 0.9 days meant the medicine sat in a sealed bay and slowly became useless. 9 days meant the colony health board sent emergency requests that would take another week to process. 9 days meant 43 sick people became 60, or more, or worse. The numbers were not dramatic. They were just numbers. But numbers had weight when you knew what they measured. Riva stood up. "The appeal process," she said. Eula mentioned the Admiral's office. Bren straightened. Soviket? Riva. She does not take meetings with haulers. Her office runs about 3 levels above anything that happens at a clearance desk. I am not asking for a meeting, Riva said. She picked up her manifest. I'm going to walk there and explain the situation. If someone stops me, I will explain it to them instead. Bryn looked at her. He had that expression that people get when they're trying to decide whether something is brave or simply stubborn and have concluded that it might be both. The command wing has security, he said. I know. Draxel's enforcer works that corridor. Grig. He is Thurak. Do you know how big Thurak get? I grew up in 1.8G, Riva said. Everything out here feels light. She said it the same way she said most things, flat, direct, without decoration. But Bryn heard something in it that made him stop arguing. Eula was watching Riva with wide eyes. Is that true? She asked. Does it really feel different? The gravity here, standard gravity, feels like walking on a soft floor, Riva said. Everything here moves easier than I expect it to. I have to remember to be careful so I do not break things by accident. Eula made a small sound that was not quite a word. Bryn rubbed the back of his neck. I'm coming with you, he said. Not to the Admiral's office. I know better than that. But I will follow at a distance and make sure you do not disappear into some dock holding room. You do not have to. No, he agreed. But you would do it for me. She would. She did not say so. She did not have to. The three of them sat for another few minutes in the noise and heat of the engine bay. Then Riva stood, straightened her jacket, and checked the time on the manifest. 6 days. She walked toward the command wing. The command wing began where the noise stopped at. It was a clean line. One side of the corridor was the working dock, loud, oily, full of the sound of machinery and heavy boots and alien voices calling across open bays. The other side was sealed floors, filtered air, and the particular quiet that authority builds around itself. Riva crossed that line without slowing. The workers she passed did not stop her. They watched. A human walking toward the command block was unusual enough to register, but nobody's job description included stopping someone who walked with that kind of certainty. So they moved aside and watched and said nothing. The first checkpoint was a gate with a single guard. Vorith, young, with the alert posture of someone who had been told this post was important. Riva stopped in front of him. Riva Oren, she said. Hauler, registration KD 7741. I need to speak with someone in the Admiral's office regarding a medical cargo hold placed by Commander Sol. The cargo expires in 6 days. I have colonial health documentation. The guard looked at her. Then he looked behind her as if checking whether she was part of a larger group that would explain why she was here. She was not part of a larger group, that he almost laughed. She could see it move across his face and then settle into something that was not quite contempt but lived near it. The Admiral's office does not take walk-in requests from freight operators. You need to submit a formal appeal through, I know the formal process, Riva said. The formal process takes 9 days. The cargo expires in 6. I am here because the math does not work any other way. The guard opened his mouth. Then a door opened down the corridor and Grig came through it. Riva had heard Bryn use the word big before. Bryn used it accurately, but without full context, the way you describe an ocean as wet. Grig was Thurak, which meant he was constructed on a scale that made standard corridors look narrow. His head nearly touched the ceiling. His shoulders were wider than the doorframe he had just walked through, and he had turned sideways to clear it. He moved slowly, not because he was tired, but because things that large do not need to hurry. The station made room for him the way water makes room for a stone. He had been told about the human at the gate. His face said he found this mildly entertaining that he stopped in front of Riva. From where she stood, the view was mostly his chest. You need to leave, he said. His voice was low and even. It was the voice of someone who had never needed to raise it. I need to speak with the Admiral's office. You need to leave, he said again. Same tone. Like a recording, he put his hand on her shoulder to turn her around. It was not a violent gesture. It was the kind of touch that assumes the thing it is touching will simply move. The hand was enormous. It covered most of her shoulder and part of her upper arm. Riva reached up and took his wrist. Her hand did not wrap all the way around it, but her grip closed and it closed with the kind of pressure that comes from bones built in 1.8 G, dense, structural, settled. Grig felt it, and something changed in his face. Not pain, surprise. The specific surprise of a hand that expected nothing and found something that he pulled his wrist back. She let go. He looked at her differently now. Still large, still certain, but recalculating. Then he swung. It was not a serious punch. That was important. It was the kind of swing you use to move something out of the way, wide, careless, the weight of his arm more than the force behind it. He threw it the way you wave at a fly, because that is all he thought was necessary. Riva moved 3 centimeters to the left. The swing passed her ear. She rotated at the hip, a full, planted rotation, the kind that uses the whole body as a single connected unit, and drove her fist into the center of his chest. One punch, not wild, not angry, precise, like pressing a specific button. The sound it made was not loud. It was dense, a compressed impact, the kind that travels through mass rather than across it. Grig sat down on the floor, but he did not fall dramatically. He did not crash into the wall or knock anything over. His legs simply stopped holding him, and he sat, heavily, on the corridor floor, with the expression of a being who had never felt his lungs refuse to fill before and did not yet know what to do about it. He was not unconscious. He was not seriously hurt, but he was sitting on the floor, and he could not stand up, and he was breathing in the careful, shallow way of someone whose body was still deciding what had happened. The corridor was silent. The guard at the gate was silent. 3 dock workers who had drifted close enough to watch were silent. Riva straightened her jacket. She looked at the guard. Her voice was even and unhurried. "Tell the Admiral I am here about cargo manifest, Kitty 7741. I will wait." She stepped to the side of the corridor and stood with her back to the wall, her manifest in her hand, exactly as she had said. She waited. Down the corridor, she heard a door open. Then another. Then the particular set of quick, deliberate footsteps that belonged to someone who had just watched something on a security feed and had chosen to respond personally. Draxel came around the corner. He stopped when he saw Grig on the floor. He looked at Grig. He looked at Riva. He looked at Grig again. For the first time since she had arrived at his clearance desk, Commander Draxel had no prepared script. His face moved through several expressions and settled on none of them. Riva met his eyes. She did not say anything. She did not need to. A door opened to the far end of the corridor. Not the side doors. Not the access hatches. The main door, the one with the seal of the Kelvar Station Authority printed above the frame. It opened inward, quietly, and Admiral Sovaket walked through it. She was Vorith like Draxul, but the resemblance ended there. Where Sul was broad and loud and built his authority from the outside in, Sovaket was lean and still, with the quality of someone who had spent decades making decisions that could not be unmade. She wore no extra ornamentation. Her rank pins were small, standard issue. She did not need decoration. The room arranged itself around her without being asked. She looked at the corridor. She looked at Grig on the floor, who was now breathing normally again but had made no attempt to stand. She looked at Draxul, who had no expression left to hide behind. She looked at Riva. She said nothing for a moment. Then, "You, come with me." She looked at Draxul once. Just once. He took a step back. Riva followed the Admiral through the main door. The office on the other side was clean and functional. Wide windows looked out over the dock floor far below, the full spread of Kelvar deep dock visible from above, all its bays and corridors and moving parts laid out like a diagram. The Admiral stood at the window with her hands behind her back and looked at it for a moment before she turned around. "I have the feed from the corridor," the Admiral said. "I watched it before I walked out. I want to hear it from you directly." Riva put the manifest on the desk. Cargo Class 7 Medical. Enzyme treatments for an outbreak colony 3 relay jumps out. The supplies have a 6-day packaging integrity window that is now closer to 5. Commander Sul placed a hold requiring secondary inspection with a 9-day wait for the first available slot. She paused. "I went to appeal in person because the math does not leave time for the standard process." The Admiral picked up the manifest. She read it. This time, someone was actually reading it. 43 infected, she said. Colonial Health Authority signature. She set it down. Why did you not file through the Regional Medical Priority Channel? I did not know it existed, Rivas said. Commander Sewell did not mention it. The Admiral looked at the manifest again. Her expression did not change, but something behind her eyes moved. Then she asked, almost as a separate thing, the way you ask a question you've been holding to one side while you finish the important work. Where did you learn to hit like that? Riva looked at her steadily. I grew up on Marin Station. Outer Belt. Our gravity compensation failed when I was 3 years old. We lived at 1.8 standard until I left at 22. A pause. That is nearly 2 times standard, the Admiral said. Yes. For 19 years. Yes. The Admiral was quiet. Then she moved to her desk panel and opened a secondary screen. Continue, she said. Riva continued. She explained it the way Bryn had once explained it to her when she was 16 and a visiting medic had looked at her bone density scans with an expression she had not understood at the time. The body builds what it needs. In low gravity, bone density decreases. In high gravity, it increases denser mineral deposits, thicker cortical walls, muscle fiber that rewires itself for constant load. The process is slow. It takes years. But after 19 years in 1.8 G, the result is not a human who looks strong. It is a human who looks ordinary and is built like structural material. I do not look dangerous, Riva said. I know that. I'm not tall. I'm not wide. Most species that meet me assume I am fragile because humans are already assumed to be fragile. The assumption is wrong, but it is common. There was a sound from near the door. Bryn had apparently followed far enough to be standing in the outer office, close enough to hear. The Admiral glanced in that direction and did not object. Bryn spoke from the doorway. Marin Station workers have been tested at the Galactic Medical Institute twice, he said. The data is in their archives. High-G colony humans register muscle density comparable to young Thurak. The bone composition is different, but the structural strength is similar. It does not look like anything from the outside. The Admiral looked at him. 6 years on this dock, he said. Engine crew. She looked back at Riva. You said the assumption is wrong, but common, the Admiral said. And yet you have not corrected it. Not with words. Words take longer than people want to listen, Riva said. And I did not come here to prove anything. I came here for the cargo clearance. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat down and opened the manifest file on her desk panel. Her fingers moved across it quickly, the way they moved across everything, with the economy of someone who had decided what they were going to do and was already executing it. I am revoking the secondary hold, she said. Your cargo is cleared for immediate loading. Priority departure flag, which means bay access opens within the hour. She did not look up. The medical priority channel will be documented in your holo record, so you have it for future reference. From the outer office, Riva heard the sound of Drax Soul's voice, beginning something, the first word of a protest. The Admiral said one word, flat and final, without raising her volume or turning her head. Soul stopped. The Admiral stamped the manifest with green clearance and handed it back to Riva. The colony receives its supplies, she said. That is what matters. Riva took the manifest. She folded it once. She put it in her jacket pocket. Thank you, she said. She meant it. She always meant the thing she said. Stories move through a working dock faster than ships, due to be why the time Riva walked back from the command wing. The shape of what had happened in that corridor had already traveled through 3 mess halls, 2 engine bays, and the lower supply level. By the time she reached the cargo bay where her freighter sat, the version in circulation had Grigg unconscious for 10 minutes, 2 guards knocked down, and a Vorth commander fleeing down the corridor. None of that was true. She knew better than to correct it. Bryn caught up with her near the bay entrance. He was slightly out of breath, which meant he had been moving faster than he usually allowed himself to. People are talking, he said. I know. I mean seriously talking. I passed 4 different conversations and heard your name in all of them, in 3 different languages. Riva unlocked the bay and started checking the loading equipment. The cargo loader had already received the priority flag. The green light was active on the manifest panel, and a dock crew was assembling at the far end of the bay with the supply pallet staged and ready. They moved quickly, with the particular energy of workers who had been waiting on a delay and were now happy to be moving again. She was watching the loading sequence begin when she heard the heavy footsteps behind her. She turned around. Grig stood at the entrance to the bay, that he was alone. No Draxel behind him, no guard. Just Grig, standing in the bay doorway with the careful posture of someone who has thought about how to enter a room and is now executing that plan. He was holding his chest with one large hand, not pressing on a wound, just resting his palm there like you do when a place on your body has told you something new. He looked at Riva. "I want to understand what you did," he said. Riva turned fully toward him. "How are you feeling?" "Strange," he said. He seemed to consider that word and find it accurate. "Not pain. Strange. Like something moved that has not moved before." "The solar plexus," she said. "The nerve cluster there. You hit it right. The whole body stops cooperating for a moment. It passes." Grig nodded slowly. He was looking at her hands. "Show me," he said. That IT was not a demand. That surprised her, that something his size could ask rather than tell. She considered it for a moment. Then she took him through it slowly. The slip, the small movement offline, the hip rotation, the point of contact. She showed him without touching him, just the mechanics, the geometry of it. Grig watched with total focus, the way a young student watches a demonstration of something they have never seen before and intend to understand completely. "You use the rotation," he said. "Not just the arm. The arm alone is just an arm," she said. "The whole body is something else." Grig was quiet. He looked at his own fist and then at hers. The size difference was significant enough to be almost funny. He seemed to recognize it and find it interesting rather than embarrassing. "You are smaller than my forearm," he said. "Yes. And yet," she agreed. He gave a slow, considering nod. Then he turned and walked back out of the bay. No drama. No ceremony. Just a very large being walking quietly away with something new to think about. Bryn appeared from behind a cargo pallet where he had been making himself invisible. He watched Grig go. "That," Bryn said, "was not what I expected." "People are usually more curious than they look," Riva said. They watched the loading proceed. The medical pallets went in clean and fast, the crew working with the efficiency of people who had been given a priority flag and intended to honor it. Riva walked the line and checked seals. Everything was in order. Draxel came in the late afternoon, but he did not come with guards. He did not come with a statement. He walked into the cargo bay with the careful steps of a being who had been told, privately and clearly, that a different approach was now required. He stopped several meters away from Riva, which was more distance than necessary, and told her something about how the conversation had gone with the Admiral. He said, "Your cargo has been flagged for priority departure. Bay access is confirmed. The loading crew will stay until the job is done." His voice was flat, not hostile, not warm, the specific tone of someone fulfilling an obligation they had not chosen. Riva looked at him. She could have said many things. She had spent the better part of 2 days with good reasons to say them. The math of the medicine, the 43 sick people, the casual arrogance of the red hold stamp. She could have laid all of it out, and she would have been right about every word. She said, "Thank you, Commander." She meant that too. Draxel looked at her for a moment. His expression moved through something she did not have a name for. Not guilt, not respect, something that was maybe the first step toward both. He gave a short nod and left the bay. Bryn let out a long breath. "You thanked him. He is doing the right thing now," Rivas said. "He was doing the wrong thing 4 hours ago." "I know, but it is now." She went back to checking the seal on the last pallet. "The thing that matters is that it changes, not why it changed." Bryn was quiet for a moment. Then, "Eula is going to want to say goodbye." "I know. Where is she?" "Probably standing just outside the bay, trying to decide if she is interrupting." Riva walked to the bay entrance. Eula was standing just outside it, holding her clipboard, watching the loading crew work with the expression of someone who was very happy about something and was not sure she had permission to show it. When she saw Riva, she straightened. "The clearance came through," she said. It was not a question. It did. "We load tonight, depart at first cycle." Eula made a small sound. Her antenna moved in the quick pattern that Riva had learned meant something like relief. "The colony," she said. "They will be all right." They will get what they need in time, Riva said. That is the most anyone can do. Eula nodded. She held the clipboard tighter. I also filed a complaint, she said, against Commander Sol for the handling of solo hauler arrivals. There is a form. Most people do not know it exists. I filed it today. She looked at Riva. I was nervous to do it, but I thought, if it makes the next arrival easier, then it was worth the nervousness. Riva looked at her for a long moment. It was worth it, she said. You did the right thing. Eula's antenna moved again. She looked at the loading bay, at the pallets moving into the freighter's hold, at the crew working under the green glow of the priority light. Good, she said quietly, and she meant it the same way Riva did, completely and without needing anyone to confirm it. Eula came back one more time before the loading was done. Riva was running the final checklist inside the cargo hold, checking seal integrity on each pallet, logging temperatures, confirming the cold pack units were drawing power from the ship's secondary line rather than their internal batteries. It was detailed, repetitive work. She did not mind it. Detailed, repetitive work was honest. It either passed or it did not. There was no room for misunderstanding. She was halfway through the third row when she heard small steps at the cargo ramp. She turned. Eula was at the bottom of the ramp, holding something in both hands. It was small, a carved piece of pale stone no bigger than Riva's thumb, shaped into something that might have been a knot, or a wing, or both at once depending on how you held it. This is a Sephani travel token, Eula said. She climbed the ramp slowly, like she was not entirely sure she was allowed on the ship, but had decided the occasion was worth the uncertainty. We give them when someone goes on a long journey. It is not a valuable thing, just a custom. She held it out. Riva took it. She turned it over in her hand. The stone was warm. Someone had been holding it for a while before giving it away. Thank you, Riva said. Eula looked at the cargo hold around her, at the rows of sealed medical pallets, the lights, the clean mechanical order of it. Then she looked at Riva. You are the first person, she said carefully, who made me feel safe here, on this dock. Since I arrived, Riva did not know what to do with that. It was not a small thing to say, and Eula had said it simply, without decoration, which made it heavier. Riva looked at the token in her hand. You made it easier for the next one, Riva said. The complaint you filed. The person after me, human or Sephani or whoever comes through that gate small and quiet, they will have one fewer barrier because you did that. You did not have to. Neither did you, Eula said. They stood in the hold together for a moment. The cargo loaders had finished and left. The bay outside was quieter now, the way docks go quiet near departure windows when the work is done and the waiting begins. Somewhere below the bay floor, the station's systems moved in their steady, indifferent rhythm. Riva closed the last seal on the final pallet and logged the confirmation. Safe station, she said to Eula. It was the Sephani phrase for goodbye. Bren had taught her that the first evening, Eula's antenna moved in the quick, grateful pattern. She climbed back down the ramp without another word. Riva watched her go, then closed the hold. Bren was waiting on the dock side of the ramp. He had a canvas bag over one shoulder and the particular expression of someone who is pretending he is not going to feel the absence of something. You are staying, Riva said. Got 2 more years on the contract, he said. And honestly, the engine bay here is better than anything in my home sector. He shrugged. I am fine. She believed him. He was the kind of person who was genuinely fine in a lot of different circumstances. It was not a performance, just his actual shape. Come back through, he said. Not on a crisis run, just to come through. I will, she said. She walked up the ramp. At the top, she turned once and looked back at the dock. The full length of Kelvara deep dock spread out in both directions. Wide corridors, high ceilings, the machinery of a station that had been running for decades before she arrived and would keep running long after she left. Alien species moving through it. Cargo moving through it. The ordinary, enormous work of keeping a galaxy connected and fed and alive. She went inside and sealed the ramp. The departure sequence took 40 minutes. She ran it alone, the way she always did, checklist by checklist, system by system, the same order every time because the same order never let things get missed. The engines warmed. The dock arm released. The Kelvara traffic controller gave her a departure window, and she took it, easing the freighter out of the bay and into the open approach lane that a message came through on the hauler channel as she cleared the dock perimeter. Short, administrative from the Admiral's office. IT said, "Your manifest record has been flagged for expedited clearance on all future arrivals at Kelvar Dock. The flag carries no expiration." Riva read it twice. Then she set it aside and concentrated on the approach lane. She thought once about sending a formal acknowledgement. Then she decided the Admiral did not need one. The Admiral had done what she thought was correct and did not require thanks for it. That was a quality Riva recognized. The relay jump point was 2 hours out at standard cruise. She set the course, engaged the autopilot, and sat back in the pilot's seat while the station shrank behind her and the dark opened ahead. She did not think about Grig on the floor, or the red hold stamp, or the long flat silence of that corridor after the punch landed. She did not think about Draxul's stiff concession, or the Admiral's small nod, or the way the dock workers had moved aside and watched. She thought about the colony. She thought about 43 people she had never met and would never meet, in a place she was only passing near. She thought about the cold-packed pallets in her hold, the enzyme treatments sealed and temperature stable, moving toward the people who needed them at the speed of a single battered freighter on a priority flag. She thought about Euless standing at the bottom of the ramp with a small warm stone in both hands. The freighter crossed out of the dock perimeter and into open space. The stars ahead were the same stars they always were, indifferent, ancient, uncountable. She was one ship in an enormous dark, carrying medicine and moving quietly. She had not come to Kelvara to prove anything. She had come to deliver a shipment. That was what she had done. The rest had been other people's mistakes, and she had moved through them the way she moved through everything. The way you learn to move when you grow up, where the air is thin and the gravity is heavy and the work is never finished. Without ceremony, without announcement. The work was what mattered. IT always had been. She held the stone token in her left hand while her right rested on the control panel, and she flew on through the dark, and the medicine moved with her toward people who were waiting for it. And that was enough. IT was exactly enough.